Welcome to the auditorium here at Òran Mór in Glasgow. Colin Beattie, owner of Òran Mór, commissioned the renowned Scottish artist Nichol Wheatley to paint 10 large bespoke canvases depicting the tale of Robert Burns' masterpiece Tam O'Shanter. They have been 2 years in the making and we are delighted to unveil these paintings coinciding with our National Bard's 260th birthday. David Hayman, celebrated actor and founder of the children's humanitarian charity Spirit Aid, came along to Òran Mór to talk to the artists about these magnificent works. Here are David Hayman and Nichol Wheatley in conversation.
Nichol, you must have been genuinely excited or terrified when Colin Beattie called you up and said, I want to commission you to do 10 major paintings on Tam O'Shanter.
Distinctly the latter. Terrified. So, but there's a bit of history there. Colin and I started talking about this in 2006, 13 years ago. So he's always wanted to have it in the building. He always wanted the story of Tam O'Shanter to be in the bar. He thought it would be a great thing. It's a great allegory.
So did you know throughout those 14 years that at some point you were going to have to paint them?
Well, the first time we had that discussion, Alistair's work was growing arms and legs, so we kind of knew that we all had to keep an eye on Alistair and make sure that everything happened up here correctly to make what is arguably one of the greatest artworks in Scotland. So we all did that. And during that time, I think Colin had a look around, had a think about what he was trying to do, and then 2 and a bit years ago, he came back and said, right, Nichol, I want Tam O'Shanter on the bar. I've always wanted it. It's time. And I was like, great, that's fantastic, okay. And so that's what we did, and we started the discussion. So we discussed it for a wee while, and once we discussed it for a wee while, I went away. We talked about how each of us saw the poem and what the purpose of putting the poem into this wonderful building is. And then it was, I did some drawings. We started discussing the kind of key points that we try and identify in the poem to illustrate, to illuminate, as it were. And then we started painting.
Did you enjoy the process? Was it a labour of love?
It was yes. Colin's a great patron. He's a great person to work for. He trusts you utterly. He's like, it's your vision that I want to see on those canvases, so go. Tell me if you have a problem. That's the only thing I need to know.
Isn't that one of the greatest things anyone can say to an artist? Is your vision, go.
Yeah.
Whatever art form.
But it's the level of trust. And this is a big commission. It's a big addition to what is already a fantastic building. But to have that trust given to you is just amazing. It's an honour. So no, but at the same time terrifying, because it's got to be as good as I can ever be. It's going to be in public view forever, so people can judge me every day of the week, especially after they've had a few pints.
So Nichol, are there any familiar characters in this painting?
Well,
alive or dead?
I have to admit that they are all familiar. So when I was looking around for people to model for this painting in this series, there's only one place to go. So I went to the pub on a Friday night with the camera and the sketchbook and offered to buy them pints if they wanted to be in.
Have they seen the painting?
Some of them have. The man in the fancy blue coat next to the window is Òran Mór, who's a farm labourer. We've known each other since we were kids together.
Lovely.
He doesn't know he's in it yet.
He doesn't.
No, so Marco Palmieri, looking across the scene as the publican, is actually the publican in my local pub. Michelle White, Tam O'Shanter, the man in the background chatting up with the landlady, is a figment of imagination. Òran Mór, Chris Hadley, Al Young, Keith White, Bruce Harper, Forbes Graham, Alex Pritchard.
Great stuff.
How it should be.
Absolutely. Nichol, what strikes me about this painting is you've got a physical dynamic in there. It's like the clouds are in movement, the trees are in movement, you've got the swallows flying. There's a real dynamic to that, and yet it's gentle.
Is that thing of a summer's day,
yeah,
when you're outside and you can see the movement, you can see the river slowly ebbing past. I've got to say, this was the one piece that Colin turned around and said, this is one bit that has to be in these series of paintings. It's the best bit of the poem. And it's a bit where Burns is written in English. And he's written so well. It's as good as you could possibly get, a bit of writing. But the sentiment of it, the idea that there is goodness other than the drink and the debauchery and the perhaps straying the wrong way when you should be heading home to the missus. I love this kind of counterpoint, and I think it's one of the things that makes the poem so strong. So the other thing that I kind of thought, thinking about all of that within the context of the poem, is why there's a female figure in the clouds, reclining with her elbow to their face, quietly hidden, looking down on all good things.
Yes, I can see her coming out. That's
so. And the thistledown, or the borealis race. Remember when you caught thistledown when you were a kid, and you blew it free? It was a fairy getting it, and it gave you a wish.
the blue is so striking, but it's melancholy, it's lonely, but there's a man, he's at peace with himself. He's got his dram, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's on his horse.
And he knows, the horse knows the way home. He doesn't need to worry too much about it. He's got a good horse. And it doesn't look like a bad night at this point. It's windy, and it's not a great night, but he's had a great night in the pub.
But worse is to come.
That's what I liked about this one. There's two aspects to this.
It's the calm before the storm, isn't it?
That leading into this, still building the tension a wee bit. But there's a painting by Caspar David Friedrich, which is a man standing on a mountaintop looking down over clouds by himself. And it's one of these kind of, from that period of thinking, it's that man is himself against the universe. Okay, so that was playing in my head when I was doing this. But the other thing was that, it's the walk home. And when I moved to the country, when you're in the city, it's great. You have a few pints and you go home and it's well lit and you see people that you know on the way home. It's great. When you go to the country,
it's an adventure.
Holy crap! You haven't got a torch, you're goosed, and you're stumbling across fields, and the sheep are kind of in the field going, and they go, you think it's somebody, and you hear all these weird noises. It's fantastic. So there was a wee bit of that I was trying to express in the painting.
And Nichol, that wonderful glow. Is that the glow of warmth and welcome and happiness and comfort? Or is it the entry into another world, a darker world?
Next painting might kind of get you that one.
But there, it's so comforting. You want to go towards that light because there's such warmth. There's the gold in it and the yellow and the reflection on the underside of the clouds.
Do you know what inspired that light?
What?
It's the light of my house when I'm walking home from the pub. Because there's a lovely light. My house sits by itself in a field. And you walk across the field, you walk across the road, and you jump across the turnstile, and there you are, there's the house, and you walk across the last bit of the field, and there's always this wonderful light inside it. And you're like that, and you know the fire's on inside, and you're like that, fantastic. And that was the light I was thinking about. And it's possibly the wrong light when you're thinking the devil's just appeared in the kirk.
And there's it's so clever, because that's what draws him to it.
And I love, the idea was that the horse would be wide awake going, what on earth? And Tam's obviously just kind of slightly snoozing slightly on the horse. He's had a great night and he knows the horse is on his way home. And this character's flitting through the graveyard as they go into the kirk.
And look at his tail. Beautiful.
Just that slight kind of twitch as he thinks about it. What's this, by the way, big man?
Yeah, there's a little electric thrill going through him.
Yeah.
So atmospheric.
It seems to be the favourite piece. It seems to be. Everyone seems to be very interested in this one.
It's just a ruined kirkyard.
Yeah. It's one that Robbie Burns and his father restored. They restored the kirk themselves. That's how he was so familiar with it. Is one of the reasons he possibly used it as the subject of this poem.
Good Lord, I've done documentaries on Burns. I've never known that.
Yeah, him and his father. Yeah, so I think they. At that point, it still had the beams on it when they were restoring it. But they'd restored the stonework and such so that it wasn't going to crumble any further.
Now, very, very dramatic. They call this Bacchanalian feast. Good Lord. It's very, very powerful. Very dark. Very compelling. You've still got your little winking figure screaming out the window. You love putting figures in windows, don't you?
Yeah, I love adding more and more detail to the thing.
Now, if you did you have a deadline for these paintings?
Yeah. So in a week or so, It's the 260th anniversary
That's right.
of our
So they have to be
dear
finished by
national bard. So so that was always the idea. The idea that we were working towards that, and it would be here for the burn sufferer that's here tonight.
Right. Now imagine, because of the richness and the complexity of your paintings, if you didn't have a deadline, you'd go on tinkering, wouldn't you? Or would you be able within yourself to say,
this wonderful ceiling that we are underneath, Alistair has been painting for 14 years and it's about halfway done. I admire him hugely. I could possibly still be painting these a little bit in the future. So, yes.
So you're going to be up a ladder in the downstairs bar, upside down, finishing off your painted.
Possibly.
And more little figures screaming out of windows.
To be honest, we finished them, they opened on Monday, we finished them on Saturday. So it was literally, the last brush mark was on Saturday at midday.
Now, all artists, we all work to deadlines. And we love them and we hate them. At the same time, in equal measure. Are you glad you had that deadline?
I am. I really am, because I think you have to have the deadlines. What's good is to have the freedom as well, but I think the deadline brings work out of you.
And it imposes the discipline,
yeah.
doesn't it? Nichol, you lull us in with a false sense of security into swirling gold and warmth and yellow and welcome. But actually, you've got ghouls galore in there.
Yeah, well,
Ready to rip your soul out in a nanosecond, and that temptress, that seductress in the middle. Who was she based on?
So I wouldn't like to say the name, but
go on.
Everybody in the second painting is based on our local pub. And occasionally we used to go to another pub, which was 6 miles away. And she may have been the reason why we went 6 miles for a pint.
Was she the landlady?
She was actually an incredibly talented young woman who's very clever, very, very motivated, and has this bar job in the evenings. And on a Wednesday night, she works the bar down in Dollar, and you know, we all thought she was fantastic. And I got to chatting to her, and she's clever, witty, funny. And I suddenly realised, I was there one night, and I was like, "You're Cutty Sark. You are Cutty Sark. You're clever."
Did she know who you meant? Who you were talking
yeah,
about?
and we talked about it, and I said, "Do you want to come up and pose to be Cutty Sark?" And she said, "Yep." And she's seen the painting. She knows everything about it. So, yep.
So she knows she's immortalised.
Yep.
Paint
Yeah.
in oil.
It's for her to say if she wants to say who she is or not. So, obviously, yeah.
Can I ask you about a bigger picture? Colin Beattie, who commissioned you, who's a wonderful man, a great supporter of the arts, as you know. He believes arts for all and arts all year round. How do you feel about that?
I honour him for it, and I can't think of any other word other than honour him for it, because I've helped Alistair a little bit with his incredible cycle of murals that inhabit this building, and I've seen the other artists that work here. And the first thing I said the night that we opened these paintings was I was honoured to be part of the brotherhood and sisterhood of artists that Colin has gathered in this building. And this building is an auditorium, it's a bar, it's a restaurant, it's a venue, it's a theatre, it's where gigs are played, it's where people dance. This is an amazing building. This is more than the sum of its parts.
The great meeting place, the great gathering,
song.
the coming together.
It's
a great song.
And you know, I don't think he gets enough credit for this.
No, he doesn't.
I don't think if you built a museum that worked like this, and there's museums that have been built with less effort
This is a living, breathing, working museum.
Things happen in it. And you know, the number of times I've come in here and you see a pal and they're sitting talking about a play, or they're talking about a painting, or they're trying to crack a bit in their novel, and you're sitting there, come down, there's three of you, and you all sit and chat, and suddenly one of you will say something to the other guy, and you can see the light click. It happens here. It happens in this building, and it happens a lot. And I love it. Absolutely love it.
I love your enthusiasm. Brilliant. Look at this. This is like a zombie game that my boys have played when they were growing up. Kids would love this. It's a zombie movie, isn't it?
All of these stories come from the same thing. That slight fear that you're going to get caught. Okay? Tam's been out drinking, and he should have been home ages ago. And maybe he's going to get caught.
Maybe he's going to get more than a scalp.
But no, I know what you mean. It's a beautiful analogy. The idea of I like the idea of the zombie movie.
Maybe there is a modern day version of Tam O'Shanter that kids could play on video games. There you go.
It would be.
Take Robert Burns into a new genre.
It'd be an interesting way to think about it. Though then again, the zombies are the ones staring at the screens. When I first looked at this story and we started talking about it, one of the ideas was to have it set in the contemporary and to have it as you'd been stuck in Òran Mór a wee bit too long, and then you were walking home to the missus and you were going across the bridge on Queen Margaret Drive. And, you know, it's being chased across Queen Margaret Drive, and, you know, what was it that chased you in the contemporary? You know, so I did like the idea of what's the modern threat, what's the thing that gets you. So that was something that fascinated me slightly. But then we talked about it, and it's such a good story set when it's set, and, you know, it's such a beautiful bit of land, and the buildings and the bridge and everything down there. And I like the idea of setting it into the landscape rather than keeping it quite so figurative. So part of this is, one of the things about the devil in this one is he could be a dead cow in a ditch, and, you know, there's a rotting cow's head, and that's what he's seen, and that's what he's imagined is chasing him. So it could just be his imagination chasing him. Okay, so it was that trying to him. This is why the spectral legs and the kind of the creature of the imagination chasing after Tam as he belts down the road on his good horse.
Terrifying.
It's, with that, well, I don't know. All my days I grew up in the land, and when you do see death, and when you do see death abandoned, it is quite terrifying, because it does.
But you're more used to it than us city dwellers, because I mean, we live on concrete. We walk on concrete 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, we never really have to face death very much.
Yeah, well, I remember working with the farmer on the hills, and, you know, you'd be up looking for the dead ewe, and, you know, checking to see if there was lambs lost in the hill. And I remember when I worked on the islands as a sheep hand in the summers, we used to have to, you'd pick them and lift them back up cliffs that they'd fallen down and set their legs and have them in the stables and picking the maggots out of the flesh. Oh, it was great fun. I loved being in the country as a kid.
That's why you moved back as an adult, isn't it?
Yeah. The 20 years I had in the West End of Glasgow were rubbish.
This is the second time I've looked at these paintings. You get more and more each time you look. I mean, the density of all these goes in there. The terror of him. The energy you have in the water is just coming through the burn.
Is the idea of Pearl. I like the idea that the only way he can get across is the bridge, and he has to get across the bridge. He can't just run across running water and get away from them. And I like the idea of, you know, the allegory, the metaphor that the devil is trying to get him to, you know, misbehave and get to the point where he doesn't get back to his wife. And initially when I was painting it, it was great fun painting it, and then you've got the hordes of hell spilling out from underneath the devil. And I got very interested in this. And then I thought it'd be great to paint them all as the Brexit politicians. And so I did. And I painted all these figures in, because I was sitting there.
What did you have Boris Johnson and Michael Gove in?
Yeah, I may have had some of those. I wouldn't really like to say things. Because I found myself sitting in my studio swearing at my radio. Just every day I would be sitting there listening to the 1 o'clock news and just swearing at the radio continuously, like a slightly insane painter in a studio by himself. And I started painting these figures in. And I painted them all in, and I thought, no, I can't do this. And I painted them all out and made them into...
But if you'd gone for the contemporary interpretation, you could have done.
Oh!
You could have had them all in there.
Actually, there's probably a good cartoon in that. Tam O'Shanter is the Brexit tale. Sorry to bring the B word into the thing. But it's the great painting. It's a great subject. It's like a great play to tackle. It's such a good thing to try and paint.
You managed to unleash such energies in your paintings. There's energy in there. And physical terror. You know he's in physical danger. Good luck. He's going to topple off the horse over the bridge and be devoured by the horse coming over after him.
The horse is not happy, absolutely staring up at everything, completely different. And I did like the idea of the clouds as that kind of thing that travel through the story. So the clouds change and tell the story.
And kind of, yes, they're very, very dominant, very...
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. But it's great fun to paint. Scottish landscape is so wonderful. We're so lucky to live in a landscape like
this. Is that not a challenge?
Yes, but that's the beauty of being outside. This is why I love painting outside, because you go outside and you're painting this beautiful kind of nice, quiet, calm scene, and you're sitting there in your t-shirt, and about 6 minutes later it's snowing, and you're trying to think, well, maybe do a minimalist piece now.
So, in each of these, did you have a physical landscape that you went to and painted first?
Well,
or were inspired by a particular pathway or forest?
Absolutely. So, I spent quite a lot of time down in Ayrshire. At Burns Cottage, which is the subject of the last painting. It is actually Burns Cottage that I've used, and then obviously Kirk Alloway. I sat and drew that. I drew it at night, I drew it during the day. I sat and watched how the light changed, how the light moved through the building, how I could imagine it being lit from within. And then obviously Brigadoon, I went there. Bill Costley has a lovely hotel now there, so it's all a bit more landscape.
Yeah, it's
nice, fantastic, with a great view actually out the window of it. And so you had to sit and imagine what it would have been like back when, and
because the main road's just here, isn't it?
Yeah, so you're on another bridge looking down at it. So I went across and sat in the field and looked at it, and I was lucky enough to watch people walking across, which gives you the sense of scale of it. And you just sit and you draw, and you draw, and you draw, and you draw. And that was the great fun thing, was wandering around, drawing, imagining how you were going to do it. And there's same as location scouting for the films. There's 30, 40 locations that I looked for certain places, and I'd looked at them and looked at them and looked at them, and then I'd find the place I wanted to be, and I'd sit and draw it on and off for a day to try and get a sense of it.
Any of them not the actual locations that you went to? Did you find another one more inspirational than, say, the actual location that
Well, actually, two of them are from where I live. Okay, but the landscape looked like Ayrshire. So the one, the pleasures are like poppy spread. And the one of him riding alone across the empty, windy land as the moon comes up, both of those are from Kinrossshire. Both of those are the River Devon, but at different parts.
But they work as Ayrshire, don't they?
They work as Ayrshire. They couldn't have been done if they could, unless they looked like Ayrshire, unless they had that feel of it. And
it's a very specific landscape, Ayrshire, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not Highland at all.
No, and it's that west coast. There's that bit of light that you see, especially at the time of year when this is set. There's that incredible light. The low sun just starts to bring that luminosity. Yes. Yeah.
This blue built up the same way as your lighter blue over there.
Yeah, it's still that wonderful Dutch 17th century technique. So at one point, 3 or 4 of the canvases were in the studio, and they were all bright red. Somebody came in, and went, "Oh gosh, you're going really dark with it. This is all blood." I was like, "No."
It's only a stage in the process.
Yeah.
So do you do it by building up layer upon layer upon layer?
Yeah. So I paint in a kind of fairly classical technique, and it's really, there's a lot of underpainting. So there's the classic, you draw it. You make the once you've done all the drawings to figure out how you're going to do it, you make the small studies, and there's 4 or 5 of them for each canvas. And then there's a big 2 foot by 3 foot one where you've kind of worked out all the main problems you're going to trying to anticipate them before you start painting them. Then you make it up as a cartoon, which is a kind of drawn painting. And you've got the idea of how it's going to work, and you make sure it works at the scale, because you can't really figure out all the problems until you see it at full scale.
So you do a full-scale drawing?
On the canvas. I'm very lazy.
Okay.
And then once you've done that, then it's slowly building up the painting. So there's the roughing, and then there's the blocking, and then after that you start building and building and building, and then deepening the texture and deepening the luminosity that you're trying to catch in each bit of the painting. And then this is Burns Cottage. So this is based on the actual Burns Cottage down in Alloway.
So at its densest, how many layers of paint would there be in any one particular part of it?
20, 30.
As many as that?
Easy, yeah. And some bits maybe
and each of those layers affects the eventual outcome of the
finished
piece.
So I paint incredibly thinly, and it's you paint you do the drawing, you block out so you kind of get the mass of it, and then you wash it or paint it over and then wash it, and you're trying to build up this kind of tension in the paint to try and express what you're trying to do, which has also got to kind of tie with the drawing as well. So, But
it's genuinely a process of magic. I'm not a painter, I'm not in any way at all, my talents don't lie there. But the idea that this has been built up, your light is being reflected from several layers of paint below that, which is white, and it's reflecting the light through the layers of paint.
It's one of the things that cracks me up, because we have such a wonderful living history of painting, and we can learn so much from it. And that's I'm just, you're just adding another centimetre onto this kilometre of history in art. The other thing is, your peers aren't the guys standing around you. The peers are the guys from the 17th and 18th century who knocked it out of the park, who you'll never match. You kind of
we may meet one of these days.
Yeah, in the big studio in the sky. So, yeah.
Now, Nichol, you've created a magnificent series of paintings that will certainly stand the test of time. I mean,
thank you.
I think it's truly awesome. I can't remember, something of this scale created by an artist for a very, very long time. I mean, you talk about Alistair, of course, his extraordinary ceiling that he's been working on for 14 years.
Yeah.
But I really do hope, I wish you all the success with it. I hope it brings great pleasure to many, many people and inspires so many more, I hope, and particularly young people.
We owe all our inspiration to the Bard. It's a great story. It's a great story.
Well, it's been a real privilege.
Thank you. No, thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it.